everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing my July reading wrap-up, starting with my little library card. I read 20 books this month, not as much as I have been reading, but still it allowed me to finish my reading challenge for 2024, so yay! When it comes to my 24 books to read in 2024, I'm getting very close to finishing this, and I read one book this month in this challenge, and that was The Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Jelly Clark, and then I realized that the original book that I had for this challenge, which is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, may not be coming out this year. I've seen a lot of publication dates as 2025, so I switched that out with Heir by Saaba Tahir, which I definitely know is coming out this year because I received an advance copy of it, and it comes out, I believe, in early September. So I have switched out that for this challenge, and I am very excited. As we move throughout the year, I'm going to begin completing these challenges or a lot of these spreads, and my first one other than the ARC TBR to be completed is my reading tracker, and I have officially surpassed 160 books for 2024. And then for one of my other TBRs, which is my KU TBR, I read one book, which was Structural Damage, and I gave it 2 stars. It definitely was not as enjoyable as I was hoping it would be. Moving on to my next reading challenge, which is quickly filling up, and that is my ABC challenge. I managed to find a J book, which happened to also be last month's reading book or book club selection, as well as books for M, Midnight Library, N, Not Another Love Song, and Q, Queen Bee. So XYZ, you are next. For my favorite book of the month, I selected Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. I really enjoyed this rom-com. Contemporary romance isn't my thing, but I really liked Julie's writing in this and the rivals to lovers theme and trope that you see in this one. And then for book club, we selected the Catch Me If You Can. Our theme for this month was international travel, and so that is a huge part of this book, and I'm very excited to get to it. Next up is just my normal listing of new releases that came out in the month of July. I was able to acquire a couple of them, including The Undermining of Twyla and Frank, Midnight Rooms, The Night Ends with Fire, The Sky on Fire, Not Another Love Song, The Lost Story, and The Spice Gate. I don't know if any of you have seen the new releases that are coming out in August, but I think at least 13 anticipated reads that I am looking forward to come out on August 6th alone, so it's going to be crazy. Moving on to my July reading wrap-up. Of the 20 books that I read this month, to be honest, I only really enjoyed a couple of them. This was probably one of the worst reading months that I can recall in a long time, and I definitely attribute that to my own fault, really, and the amount of arcs that are requested, and so many of them coming out in July, and just kind of the coincidence of all of the arcs that I read this month not really being that great, with the exception of Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto and maybe The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer, but otherwise, yeah, this was just a very, very kind of mid reading month for me. As you can tell, with only reading 20 books, it just took me a lot longer to get through some of the books that I read this month because I just wasn't enjoying them. And while I do DNF books, I try not to DNF arcs because obviously I was given an advance copy by the publisher, and so I kind of owe it to at least make it through and then kind of explain my reasons why I didn't enjoy the book very much. But yeah, it was just, I'll talk about some of the books, but even my reviews, I could only really pick 8 books that I want to talk about this month, and we will talk about those later. But yeah, I have higher hopes for August, but I've already come to the conclusion that for 2025, I will only request arcs by authors that I have already read and that I love their work, and if it's the continuation of a series that I'm already interested or have started reading, I'm not just going to request a book because I think it looks interesting or because I think I will like it, because I have been going through and a lot of the times I haven't, and there have been quite a lot of surprises this year in terms of the arcs that I read, but you know what, it just hasn't been worth kind of the struggle that I have to be actually reading all of these. So yeah, I think for 2025, I'm only going to request maybe 2 or 3 arcs per month instead of the average that I've been having, which is around 10 to 12. And then kind of really focus on tackling my other TBRs, like my physical TBR and my KU TBR, all these books that I've had on my list of to be read for so long, actually getting down to it and reading them. But some of the highlights that I had this month, and I'll talk about those, were Midnight Rooms by Danya Coyles, and of course Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. I also really liked The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer and In the Shadow of the Fall by Toby Ogundiran, and then I also liked Queen Bee by Juno Dawson, and the very unique premise that took place in Time's Agent by Brenda Peinato. So I'll talk about those more later, but for my stats for this month, the demographics of the authors that I read, 11 were Caucasian, 5 were LGBTQIA+, 4 were API, 3 were Black, and 1 was Latinx Hispanic. And then the genres that I read, 8 were fantasy, 5 were romance, 5 were mystery, 4 were LGBTQIA+, and 3 were contemporary. And then for my tags, 12 of the books I read were arcs, 11 of them I got from the library, 7 of them I own, and then 1 was from KU. And then the format, 65 were audio book format and 35% were in digital format. And then for my rating, I had no 5-star reads. I had 8 4-star reads, 10 3-star reads, and 2 2-star reads. And then for the page number, they were split 50-50 between books under 300 pages and books between 300 and 500 pages. Alright, moving on to the review portion of this wrap-up, starting with Midnight Rooms by Danya Coyles. This book is a sweeping saga with supernatural undertones set in Victorian England that immerses readers in a richly atmospheric and tension-filled narrative. The story begins in 1840, where Arabella Mumthrup, the orphan daughter of a white man and black woman, agrees to marry Elias Blackersby, scruffy in appearance yet claiming to be the scion of a fabulously wealthy family. Arabella is whisked away to Corninghill Manor, the Blackersby family estate, expecting splendor but finding decay, skittish servants, and curt elders. While the story bears similarities to other Gothic horrors and is not entirely original, Coyle's writing is incredibly immersive. The imagery in Midnight Rooms is vivid and evocative, drawing readers deep into the eerie and unsettling world of Corninghill Manor. Though the purple prose can be a bit much at times, it generally fits the mood of the story well, enhancing the overall sense of dread and misery. I gave this book 4 stars. And then my favorite book of the month, Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. This rom-com is an absolutely adorable story about 2 classical musicians with undeniable chemistry that will definitely get your heart tempo revved up a few notches. Gwen Jackson and Xander Thorne are both musical prodigies, but have had very different paths to success. After Gwen performs at his friend's wedding, she's mortified when she realizes Xander has no clue who she is, despite having worked together for a year at the Pops Orchestra. The tension between them escalates when Gwen is offered the role of first chair of the orchestra, a position Xander had secretly coveted for years. This novel is a well-executed rivals-to-lovers story that incorporates some typical rom-com tropes while managing to establish a romance you'll definitely root for. While Gwen, our main protagonist, makes some questionable decisions and the classical music elements sometimes feel a bit heavy-handed, Gwen and Xander's story is compelling and heartwarming. I gave it 4 stars. Next up is The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. The Lost Story is set against the mysterious backdrop of the West Virginia mountains. This novel is a must-read for fans of portal magic and otherworldly adventures, reminiscent of the Chronicles of Narnia or Sean and Maguire's Wayward children's series. As boys, best friends Jeremy Cox and Rafe Howell vanished in a vast West Virginia state forest, only to reappear 6 months later with no memory of where they'd been or how they survived. Jeremy is the only one who knows the fantastical truth about their disappearance. While the world searched for them, the boys were in a magical realm filled with impossible beauty and terrible danger. The narrative shines brightest through the characters of Rafe and Jeremy. Their shared history and the mysteries of their past drive the story forward, making their relationship both compelling and heart-wrenching. A perfect read for those who love immersive fantasy worlds and character-driven stories. I gave it 4 stars. Then we have In the Shadow of the Fall by Toby Ogundiran. In the Shadow of the Fall is an enthralling novella that drew me into a richly imagined world steeped in African mythology. The story follows Ashake, an acolyte in the temple of Ifa who yearns to be made a priest and serve the Orisha. However, Ashake is the only acolyte the Orisha refused to speak to, leaving her in a state of perpetual frustration and longing. As her peers ascend to full priesthood, Ashake remains on the sidelines, desperate for a breakthrough. From the beginning, In the Shadow of the Fall grabbed my attention and didn't let go until the final page. Ashake is a compelling protagonist whose struggles and determination resonate deeply. But what truly sets this novella apart is the world Ogundiran has created. The vivid imagery and intricate details bring to life a setting that is both mystical and grounded in African cultural heritage. I gave it 4 stars. Next up, we have a book that I didn't like a whole lot, but I think because of its similarities to other books I really did like. I think other people might find this book very interesting, and that is All This and More by Peng Shepherd. This book presents an interesting premise that blends the concepts of quantum technology and reality television, reminiscent of Matt Haig's The Midnight Library and Blake Crouch's Recursion. The story follows Marsh, a 45-year-old woman whose life is falling apart. Desperate for a fresh start, Marsh seizes the opportunity to be a contestant on All This and More, a show that allows participants to revise their pasts using quantum technology. Marsh sees this as her last chance to achieve her dreams and transform her life. This novel has a fascinating premise that on paper would ensnare any fiction fan, but the execution left much to be desired. The concept of an adult choose-your-own-adventure story is compelling, yet the narrative seems to trip over its own lofty ambitions, and Marsh's character was the weakest link in the story for me. Despite the opportunity to revise her life, she lacks agency and backbone, making it difficult to immerse myself with her journey. I gave this 3 stars, but again, I think because it's so similar to other well-renowned books that I think people might actually enjoy this. And again, it was basically an adult choose-your-own-adventure. So yeah, if any of you have read this or do read it, let me know your thoughts on it. But next we have The Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Djeli Clark. This is his latest novella, which takes readers into the ancient city of Talabisi, where Evine, the Eviscerator, operates as a skilled, discreet, and professional assassin. Bound by the unbreakable vows of her guild, Evine ensures her contracts are just, targets only the contracted, and follows through on every job. Her unwavering adherence to these rules is challenged when her latest mission brings her face to face with a forgotten past and a vow she cannot ignore. Many elements that make Clark's writing enjoyable are present in this work: the humor, the focus on a strong female lead, and the richly imagined world. However, this story didn't captivate me as fully as Clark's previous works. Despite its short length, the novella felt never-ending, exacerbated by the unusually long chapters. While Evine's character intensity was well portrayed, the story itself did not match her energy, resulting in a narrative that lagged at times. So I gave it 3 stars. Moving on to Queen Bee by Juno Dawson. This takes us back to the bloody beginnings of Her Majesty's Royal Coven to show us the strength, steel, and sacrifice it takes to make a sisterhood. Lady Grace Fairfax knows that something foul is at play, that someone had betrayed Anne Boleyn and her coven. With the loss of their leader and her lover, Grace will do anything in her power to track down the traitor. But there's more at stake than revenge. It was one of their own that betrayed them, and Grace isn't the only one looking for her. King Henry VIII has sent witch-finders after them, and they're organized like they've never been before. This prequel to Her Majesty's Royal Coven was a quick but fast-paced read, especially for taking place in Tudor England. But when you're in Henry VIII's court, if you're not constantly looking over your shoulder, then heads will roll. Dawson's unique storytelling and revisionist history make this a must-read for fans of the series. I gave it 4 stars. And lastly, we have Times Agent by Brenda Penato. Times Agent offers an intriguing dive into a world where pocket universes, geographically small, hidden offshoots of reality with varying time dilations, hold the key to unlocking scientific mysteries. Archaeologist Raquel and her biologist wife Marlena once dreamed of the potential these universes held for their fields and their daughter's future. However, 40 years later, Raquel finds herself in disgrace. Marlena resides in a pocket universe that Raquel wears around her neck, and their daughter's consciousness is trapped in a robotic dog. Penato's world building and the unique concept of pocket universes make Times Agent worth reading. Fans of speculative fiction and thought-provoking science fiction concepts will find much to appreciate, even if the execution doesn't fully live up to the story's potential, but I gave it 4 stars. But here is my full reading wrap-up for July 2024. But as always, thank you again to everyone who joined me for this reading wrap up. I always appreciate those who like and comment on my videos, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. But until next time everyone, happy reading!